Hello, you beautiful beings. It's Lane, and this is episode number 46 of the Unleash Your Life podcast. Thanks for showing up. The show is going to be a bit of a continuation of last week's episode where we talked about the crawl running across the bottom of the screen of our life and how when we get distracted by that crawl, we end up creating more of what we don't want than what we do want. You don't need to listen to that episode before you listen to this one, because this one will stand on its own. But just know that number 45 will be worth checking out. Well, truth be told, I think they're all worth checking out. So do that if you haven't. Today's topic is you're already lying to yourself. Maybe it's time to upgrade your lies, and I hope that intrigues you. Give me a second to run the intro, and I'll be right back. This is the Unleash Your Life podcast, where you're going to learn to rewild yourself. I'm your host, Lane Smith Brown, and I'm a best-selling author and rewilding guide. And over the last 20 years, I've been guiding women back to their truest selves. You see, you were born wild with all the wisdom you will ever need to navigate your life in a beautiful and powerful way. Then, just like everyone else on the planet, you got tamed as you fell under the power and influence of others who were also tamed. All that taming you got as a kid has you convinced you are less powerful than you really are. I call all of that unconscious programming power leaks. And on this show, you're going to discover yours, and then you're going to choose to plug them so you can get back to the wild, wise, and powerful being that you are. So grab a coffee, glass of wine, or a favorite friend, or all three, and let's talk about what living your wild self can mean for you. Welcome back, and let's get right to it, all right? If you're like most people on the planet, you can get caught up in different types of labels. I hear people do this all the time. I was in a room once where a woman who must have been over 60 years of age say because her father was an alcoholic, she was incapable of having healthy relationships. I know people who are convinced that a 9-to-5 job is the only way to create safety and predictability in their life, and the thought of following their heart just fills them with fear and trepidation. I see examples of people in the same industry experiencing both sides of the financial scale. For instance, I know hairdressers that are essentially stone cold broke, and I hear of others who are millionaires. There are excellent authors with excellent books. Some never sell one copy, and others sell hundreds and hundreds of thousands of copies. In fact, I've seen excellent authors not succeed financially, and in my opinion, a less compelling author do incredibly well. There are people that come from families that were abusive or at the very least did not provide them with the skills that transfer when you see a healthy relationship in action. And so they by default create a dysfunctional relationship. We very often emulate what it is we've experienced. And we do that because we've told the story about that thing over and over. It's a version of watching the crawl across the screen of your life that I spoke of in the last episode. We can get so addicted to that story that there is seemingly no room for us to think about something in a different way. Thinking about that in a different way is simply ludicrous because we've convinced ourselves that the reality we are experiencing, and by the way, reality was in air quotes just then, we've convinced ourselves that that reality is actually real. Let me say that again. We have convinced ourselves that the reality playing in our heads is actually real. What if it isn't? What if what you're experiencing in your life is a direct result of the lies you've learned to believe? There's no telling what your lies are because you and I aren't in a physical conversation right now, but I'm going to guess that you've been telling yourself some lies about your financial situation, your relationships, the opportunities that are available to you, what your friends say behind your back, how your coworkers feel about you, whether or not you're going to enjoy your sleep. You might even be telling lies about whether or not you're going to enjoy this podcast or this day. It all comes down to what we're expecting. And what we're expecting is a direct result of what we believe is going to happen. Now, in full disclosure, I have by no means figured all of this out. And I know that because I look around me and there are places I'm still playing smaller than I truly am. However, as soon as I become aware of those beliefs, I am making every effort at releasing them in favor of a better belief. You see, beliefs are all made up. They are just thoughts you've thought enough times that they hardened and feel real, but they are not even close to real. You've just believed enough that you think they are truth, but they are the exact opposite. They are all made up. Some serve us and some don't. Funny thing is, most people aren't in the least bit interested in evaluating on what side of the scale their beliefs fall, helpful or unhelpful. Most don't really care at all. Once they've convinced themselves that it's truth, the critical thinking just disappears. Now, you know from listening to this show that beliefs are just a direct result of you thinking something for an extended period of time until that thought hardens into a belief. At that point, you don't see it as a belief, you see it as fact or the truth. Beliefs aren't real, as in you can't touch them, smell them, lick them, put them in your purse or wallet or backseat of your car. Beliefs are simply energy, and they take up a whole bunch of space in our subconscious minds. What we believe shows up in our shoulds and our shouldn'ts, in our cans and our can'ts, in our I don't believes and our I do believes. And most people never stop to question what comes out of their mouth or what goes through their mind when they encounter something that they are somehow in opposition to, that just go into reaction mode and ride the wave again with no critical analysis. If I told you that making money has nothing to do with what you do for a living, or if I told you that relationships can be effortless and easy, or if I told you that getting fit and healthy is as easy as eating a big bowl of macaroni and cheese, you will likely balk at those ideas. There is something lodged in your mind that may tell you that money comes from hard work, or money comes from luck, or money comes from owning your own company, or money comes from ripping people off. But you could just as easily have the belief that it doesn't matter how hard you work. You never get ahead financially, or if you became an entrepreneur or owned your own company, you would likely fail because it's so risky, or you're so unlucky, or not smart enough that there's no way that money would come as a result of your skills and abilities. None of that is capital T true. They're just stories we tell ourselves that keep us stuck experiencing the outworkings of that belief. And when we have enough people telling a similar story to us, it can be quite convincing. You see, we are energetically drawn to people in similar circumstances, so the lie becomes even more convincing. I was listening to a podcast earlier this morning, and the hosts were talking about the concept of manifesting our dreams. The idea that we create our reality is a polarizing topic to a lot of people. People who talk about manifestation are often marginalized as wackos or weirdos or living in a fantasy world. After all, life doesn't work like that. We don't actually have the ability to create the life we desire, or do we? When you look around you right now and you see what it is that is in your experience, that is a direct result of the beliefs you are currently holding in your subconscious mind. So if you believe you're not worthy of a relationship, then you will either not be in a relationship, or you'll be in a relationship that is unhealthy or unfulfilling to you. If you believe God controls certain areas of your life, then you will not experience any autonomy or control in those areas. You are literally at the whim of some random idea that is controlling your experience. I've been doing a really deep dive in the last short while on this topic, and I'm getting a much clearer understanding for myself of how much time and energy I have given over to my egoic mind in dictating my experience. Still shockingly actually, but now I'm even more intent on letting all of this bullshit go, especially when it comes to money and financial freedom. If something is true, it has to be, by definition, be true for everyone, every time. Gravity is true. How our solar system works is true. The earth revolves around the sun all the time, not just some of the time, and not just for some of us. The moon affects the tides every day. It never skips. It is constant and reliable. If the universe wasn't predictable, there's no way that we could be placing satellites out there or making journeys to the moon or landing equipment on Mars. The universe has rules and predictability, so all of that is capital T true. But here's the thing. Time doesn't exist, and yet we tend to believe that is true. This used to be a big one for me. My first thought of the day used to be, I'm already behind schedule. Imagine that. I'm still groggy. I haven't even brushed my teeth, and I'm already feeling and making judgments that I am already behind schedule. I'm not entirely sure where that came from, but it was incessant and exhausting. If I ever allowed myself to sleep in, I felt an overwhelming guilt at having wasted that time. The idea of wasting time played havoc on my psyche. Want to know how I stopped that immediate reaction when I jumped out of bed? I began to say, I create time and there is plenty of time to do what I need to do. I create time and there is plenty of time to do what I need to do. As deep as that old belief was, that new belief went in so fast and so hard, I really didn't struggle with it very much. I was ready. So for years, I believed that time was running out, and so it did. Then I decided that I create time, and time didn't run out for me. What was the difference? The only difference was the belief. Time doesn't exist. It's a lie we've learned to believe. I changed the lie and I bent my reality. Are you following? I have a firm belief that I am a very healthy person who doesn't get sick. That belief was instilled in me by my parents because it was what they believed. I love that belief. It has served me incredibly well. I am both safe and I rarely get sick. So rare that I can't even think of the last time I came down with a cold or flu. I did have a bout of heat exhaustion a while back, and I am working on changing that story because I've been telling that story too much, and I no longer want that to be my reality. I'd far rather go back to enjoying my summers outside instead of hiding in my basement out of the sun. And the safety thing, I'm not 100% sure of where I got that from, but it has given me a great deal of peace as I navigate new situations. It is a very, very rare occasion where I go to any level of worry or concern. I have formed a belief that I am safe. I never lock my car doors. I never lock my house. I know somehow to the core of my being that me and my stuff are safe. I have no problem keeping that belief. That belief is serving me. Now, believing that money can come to me from places outside of where I've made an effort to bring money to myself is something I'm working on changing. I will get it. In fact, I can already start seeing the evidence of that because I know it has nothing to do with anything other than my expectations and my beliefs. It is true that there are jobs that pay you for time and effort. Those things are calculated and you're handed a piece of paper or there's an electronic transfer and it shows up in your bank account as a fair exchange. But money is actually simply energy. When we all lived in a bartering system, there was no need of a physical currency. The exchange of energy came from the gifts and abilities we each had. So I could trade my skills as a metalsmith or carpenter for food, medical attention, or a ride to the nearest town. There are cultures today that have no problem navigating their economy in this way. There are communities where people just simply take care of each other and there is no record keeping, just a commitment that everyone thrives. Over time, money has been beads, pelts, and various metals. It could just as easily have been piles of manure and bags of garbage if that was something someone needed. It's all in the perception of value. A bead has no more value than a dollar bill. It is only our belief in the difference that dictates that. So when you wake up first thing in the morning and your financial situation isn't exactly where you want it to be, what's one of your first thoughts? Do you say to yourself, money is easy and flows to me in great abundance? Or do you say the month is coming to an end really, really fast and I can't afford my bills? My conditioning leads more heavily towards the second idea, even though my life is going really well. Perhaps that's because I'm spending a lot of my time and energy changing a belief that runs generations deep, and I'm believing another lie, that means it has to take longer. Truth is, it's stickier only because I believe it's stickier. That last one is a significant thing to think about as you go through your experiences moving forward. Certain beliefs are stickier only because you believe they're stickier. If you are believing something is more difficult to get over, then that will be your experience. I imagine that for a lot of you listening to this, there is a belief that this physical plane, this physical earth, and everything that happens here is the only version of reality. We can become convinced that this is all hardwired, that is unchangeable. But we've talked about how we can't act, or that can't actually be true. Otherwise, there would be consistencies. Like being in the construction industry, assuming skills and abilities were equal, would either make everyone wealthy or leave everyone broke. All accountants would either be rich or poor, nothing in between. All hairdressers would either be wealthy or living paycheck to paycheck. You know full well there are people who work incredibly hard and are broke, and there are others who don't work much at all and make money hand over fist. There has to be something going on outside of trading skills for a dollar amount. I know it's belief, but that's a hard pill for someone to swallow when they can't see the choice they're making in what thoughts they're choosing. Remember, a thought often enough becomes a belief, and a belief believed long enough turns into our personal truth. It's all made up. Let's talk about your beliefs about your level of resilience. Are you resilient or not? And where does that belief come from? What created the thought that turned into your belief, that turned into your truth? Do you think the level of your resilience can change? And if so, what would you have to believe moving forward to create more resilience? I'm not talking about what you must do to create more resilience. I'm asking, what would you have to believe about your level of resilience? Would you have to believe it can change, expand, grow? How about your level of ingenuity, or your level of creativity, or your ability to learn new concepts, or your ability to change? What about your ability to remember people's names? I'm guilty of this one often, as I find myself repeating that I am more likely to remember a face than a name. All of that is a belief. If I became serious about changing that aspect, I would simply begin saying I find it easy to remember people's names. After all, I changed my relationship with time. Surely remembering names can be an easier switch to flip. For me, it comes down to recognizing the cost of that belief in our lives. It caused me a great deal of stress to be waking up in a panic, thinking I was running out of time before I'd even started my day. I grew tired of that feeling, so I changed the belief. The name thing just hasn't moved up the ladder of importance, so it remains unchanged. Here's the big, bold idea. Well, this is more than an idea, but it can be mind-blowing for some. It certainly was for me at the beginning. but I've had enough teachers and I've listened to enough guides and mystics over the years to understand that everything about our lives as we see it is simply all made up. We are living in an illusion that our experiences are capital T true. The experience we are having on this physical plane are completely malleable. Nothing is set in stone. If I can change my experience with time without changing anything but my beliefs and expectations, if I can stay healthy and safe simply because of my beliefs and expectations, then there is something to this theory, which means I can also change my expectations from money comes from what I do to money comes from anywhere at any time. It has nothing to do with effort. It is everything, or it has everything to do with expectations, which are simply an extension of my belief. All of it is made up. So then the choice you have to make is, do you want to believe the lie that keeps your life small and perhaps painful or unfulfilling? Or do you want to believe the lie that everything goes well for you and your life is full of pleasure? All of this, your whole story, is playing out in your subconscious mind. It's all in your imagination. I suspect that that is the biggest power leak of all, when many of us believe we have to play the hand we're dealt. And there's nothing that is further from the truth. You can go through the card deck and pick out the perfect hand anytime you wish. But you got to wake up from the illusion that you're not in choice. You are in choice every minute of your day. But instead of you consciously making your choices, you have likely given most of that responsibility to your subconscious programming. For some of you, it feels like a life of quiet desperation as you respond to the effects of that in many areas of your life. But that can also be an illusion. It's easy to get caught up in thoughts of what's going wrong, which just makes things going wrong into a belief. And that's a slippery slope most of humanity is on. Truth is, I bet your life is pretty good. There's a lot that's going well for you. If you were able to get out of bed this morning after having a restful sleep, made your way to the bathroom, your body already served you really, really well. While you were sleeping, your heart kept pumping and you kept breathing. A million things went right in your body in order for just those two simple actions to have happened flawlessly. If you found some food choices in your fridge and cupboards this morning and had the means to cook them or place them in a bowl, that's a lot to be thankful for. Maybe you have a coffee brewer and some decent coffee, or a tea, or a kettle and some tea. Maybe there's a fruit tree outside your house or some fresh baking coming out of your oven. Perhaps you've got a job to go to or a great book to read, or maybe some good friends want to meet up later in the day. Those are all things that you have a firm belief in, a firm expectation of. Those are things you don't even think about, don't worry or fret about. But they are all huge things to someone who doesn't have that and wants that. They can't imagine that that is your truth and you take it for granted. So as I get ready to leave you, I want you to recognize, based on what your experience is, what is the belief that must be playing in the background in order for that experience to be your experience. Then decide if you want to change your outcome. You can do this when your life is off the rails, but it's far easier when you feel you have some breathing space. Improving your relationships is far easier to do before one of you is packed up and is heading for the door. Changing your expectations of health can be easier when you're not sick. Oh, all of it can be done, and there are people who've done it. I'm just saying, why not start changing your beliefs right now while the train is still on the rails? Focus on what you need to believe so that you will have what you desire, and let all the rest of the bullshit go. Remember, it's not your thoughts that derail you. Thoughts are inert. They're simply a bit of energy that you can allow to pass right through you. When you hang on to that thought, it morphs into a belief and then becomes your truth. and then it runs the show. So learn to be aware of your thoughts before they morph. Don't get tangled in them. Don't resist them. Don't hang on. Observe them and let them go. And when you get the chance, start challenging your beliefs. And you do that by looking at your life and noticing what you'd like to improve. And ask yourself, what would I have to believe in order for this to change? And then start making a new belief your new truth. Well, that's it for me today. Meet you back here next time. Thanks for showing up. If this helped you in any way, please spread the word. More people doing this work make the world a better place. Know there are tools in the show notes or at weirdhummingbirds.com to take you deeper. Sign up for the Kickstarter if you're ready to let go of these excuses and begin your journey to change. It's a great place to begin. You can email me at lane@weirdhummingbirds.com, and I'd love to hear from you. All right, beautiful. Stay weird, stay curious, and change the beliefs that are not getting you the results you desire. Ta for now. Well, I hope this show rocked your world a little bit. If you want additional resources, check out the links in the show notes or at lanesmithbrown.com. And before you go, please subscribe to this podcast. It's how we get these tools into the world. And this world needs more wild women standing in their authentic power. Do that for me, will ya? Thank you.